Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Christine Madera. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Welcome to Conversations from the Edge. This is your host, Christine Madera, and we are back today with Renée Garcia. Renée is a lifelong entrepreneur and a certified reality transurfing instructor. Renée has used reality transurfing to transform failure to success, poverty to abundance, sickness to healing, and a bleak perspective into one brimming with joy and magic. Through the practical methodology of reality transurfing, she's also discovered fulfillment and true purpose and flow in her life, and how to connect with the highest version of herself. Renée now empowers her rapidly growing reality transurfing community around the world to do the same through her Facebook community, reality TV YouTube channel, and the International Transurfing Institute, which she founded in 2016. Welcome back, Renée. It's wonderful to be talking with you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Christine. I really was looking forward to this conversation with you. You're just, you may be a little bit new to the knowledge, but I feel you just totally get it. And yeah, you're an awesome host. So thank you so much for having me again.
Well, thank you. It's always fun talking with you. And I find that a lot of these things that are out there, but reality transurfing, other ideas that have been out there, there are these beautiful ideas that are coming through and people are experiencing them in different ways. And so a lot of the things in reality transurfing are things that I've come to those same understandings in other ways. So I love how all of this energy is really moving through the world and moving through each of us and in our own and unique understandings to bring it forward into the world in a really coherent way. So more and more people can step in and say, oh, wow, I really get this, because, it's clear, it's concise, and it's something that's easily accessible. And I think you do a great job making it really accessible. You've got so much great stuff out there with your Facebook group and your transurfing community and your institute. So I really appreciate that you are so very dedicated to that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. So we were going to talk today about a term that, like we were just saying, there's different ways to understand different things. And in reality transurfing, it's about pendulums. And I talk about this in my own work as thought forms and emotion forms and that kind of thing. But it's this idea that is spoken about in several different ways. But I really like the clarity when Renée talks about them via pendulums. So Renée, can you go in a little bit about what pendulums are? And then let's have a conversation about that to help people really get into it and understand it.
Yeah, pendulums, a lot of people that use this modality and have implemented this modality, pendulums is really the place where things take on a whole new level of understanding about how reality functions and why sometimes we don't feel good, or why our energy levels are low, or why things don't seem to be working out, or all the stuff that goes quote unquote wrong with life, and how that affects us, right? And what the effects of getting caught up in a pendulum actually, like what it means, what it costs our life, our layer of reality, our mindset, again, our energy levels, all that kind of stuff. So a pendulum is usually, and I'll get into a few exceptions also, but usually it's an entity that's outside of you that needs human thought energy in order for it to survive. So a few of the big pendulums in our current society, social media, especially media like the news and
Mm-hmm.
big sort of faceless entities that have something to sell you or need you to tune in. So media, social media, politics, right? Things
Mm-hmm.
like consumerism or fashion, needing to keep up with the Joneses, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the bigger house, the bigger car, all the nicer car, all that kind of stuff that consumes your
Mm-hmm.
thinking, right? It could
Right.
be needing to see a child get into a prestigious college or needing to advance yourself professionally and getting caught up in, what it takes in order for that thing to transpire. But the problem with doing business with pendulums mindlessly is that oftentimes we lose ourselves in the process, right? We become immersed in the standards that are set by the pendulums and start to believe in things that the pendulums want us to believe in, convince us that we, you know, should believe in certain ideas because there will be consequences otherwise, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in this sort of illusion that gets pitched to us, when this illusion gets pitched to us and we start to buy into it, we become lost to ourselves and to what is actually good for us and our reality as an individual, right? As an
Mm-hmm.
individual. So when you see a person, or if you are a person, and this is the place that I was in when I found reality transurfing, I was completely immersed in the standards of pendulums. I was completely lost to ideas and beliefs and all kinds of things that the pendulums had convinced me of, to the extent where I didn't even know who I was anymore. And you only have so much energy as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And if your energy gets extracted by these external entities to the extent where you become a depleted human being, whatever energy you would need to facilitate evolution and growth for yourself and help you towards higher versions of reality, all that energy that you need to do that, it's being consumed by the pendulum, so you simply don't have it. And the whole of reality transurfing is you acknowledging what is getting your energy exactly,
Mm-hmm.
what you are getting in return, right? Is the
Mm-hmm.
deal good? And then assessing that situation and making certain adjustments based on your understanding of what you're doing business with energetically, and then starting the process of taking back your energy and then using it for some higher and better purposes. So the tricky thing about pendulums, especially pendulums like the media, right? Mass
Mm-hmm.
media. So the media will convince you that if you tune into a cause, then you are being a good person, or
Mm-hmm.
you're on the up and up, you're informed, or you're doing your duty as a whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have this initial feeling of you're being a good person, you're on the up and up, you are fulfilling your purpose as a, functioning member of society, or whatever the pendulum wants you to feel, you feel that and you feel good about it. Like, let's say a social cause, right? You get in
Mm-hmm.
there and you're like, yeah, there's an injustice there, and this isn't good, and this needs to be balanced out, and I'm going to be one of the advocates for this social thing, and I'm going to make my voice be heard, and initially you have this feeling that you are doing good,
Mm-hmm.
but this is just an illusion. It's actually not helping the system at all. It's sort of getting you to tune in, giving you the illusion that you're getting something in return for jumping on this bandwagon. And shortly after this sort of initial feeling of doing the right thing, you're just taught by the pendulum, and you don't have those sensations of doing good anymore. Then you essentially are just being held captive. And when you're held captive, that looks like, in this specific example, then you become addicted to checking the news to make sure that you don't lose that sense of, I need to know what's going on, right? All of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
it switches over, and you go from being a, you know one of the people at the front of a cause, to sort of just a cog in the machine, checking because you have anxiety that you don't,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, you're not going to have the latest and greatest information.
Uh-huh.
So it's all illusion based. Yeah. And it's about waking up what is actually transpiring.
Before I discovered pendulums and how you describe these things as pendulums, and I was thinking about these things as thought forms. This was kind of how I described them to me. So with thought forms, my idea with these thought forms is that these are these thought forms that we kind of subscribe to, that we're part of, that we believe in. So ideas like democracy or money and what you need to do to get it, of being a good person, all of these ideas that have their own internal logic sequence. And within this logic sequence of these pendulums, or these ideas, or these thought forms, there is, like, say for example, money, what you need to do in order to earn money, and then how you need to, that you need to hustle for money, that you need to work hard for money, that you need to do something that you don't really like to do for money, because it's wrong to do something you like to do for money, because then you shouldn't take money for it. And how much money you should have, and how much money makes you a successful person, and all of this various things that go around together in this whole idea, for example, of money. And so when you give yourself over to the thought form, you make that thought form real, you make that illusion real, and you are always operating in like subjectively to that reality. So you make the reality or the illusion of money real, and then you are subject to that reality, which means you're always giving up your energy to this particular illusion, because you're trying to fit into it, you're trying to make your life operate within this illusion, and you're really giving your energy over to it. We do this with money, but we also do it, especially now, with like politics and political parties and different kinds of ideologies that have their own logic, that when you make that real and you become subject to that reality, you're always on the outside, giving up your energy, giving up your freedom, giving up your will, giving up, you, in order to serve these larger ideas. And that once you become aware of these ideas as simply ideas, that they're not real at all, they're just made up, and you begin to reclaim your own personal authority and autonomy and sovereignty, then you can break the hold that these have on you. And when we look at them as a society, so much of society are caught up in particular illusionary thought forms and pendulums, that sometimes it feels like freedom when you leave one pendulum to go to a different one, because then you're like, oh yeah, those people, they were so bad, and now I feel so free because I'm in this other thought
Yeah.
form or other pendulum. But eventually you give your power over to that, and it runs you, rather than you being an autonomous person interacting with that idea in the way that's most beneficial for you. So it was a really parallel way to understand pendulums and thought forms like that. But I just wanted to throw that out there as well, because they're so closely aligned.
Yeah, pendulums are big, complex, and manipulative, energetic forms. We could talk on this subject for hours. It's an incredibly rich topic with so many different angles. There are so many different angles. And the interesting thing that I've discovered with this topic, what really needs to be addressed is how it's affecting you as the
Mm-hmm.
individual, right? Because everything in this world that's man-made is in fact a pendulum. If it didn't get human thought energy, it would
Mm-hmm.
die, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
ancient languages, or old technologies that are no longer used, or all sorts of things that have come and gone. As soon as it doesn't have human thought energy to carry it, it dies. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of why it takes on that name pendulum, right? It needs the energy for it to swing, for it to gain
Mm-hmm.
momentum. The more thought energy it has, the wilder the swing, the more it presents itself to more and more people, gaining more thought energy. And it just, and that's why politics and media and all that stuff is very, very, can be very dangerous. Now, for the photojournalist, the aspiring photojournalist that wants to, work for CNN, the media means something very different to
Mm-hmm.
that person. To that person, the pendulum can serve him or her
Mm-hmm.
more so than the person that's sitting at home watching CNN, that's not gaining anything other than fear and dread. The photojournalist is going to use that pendulum to possibly connect with a higher version of reality for themselves. So, in Reality Transurfing, the book, there's a single line in there that oftentimes gets overlooked, and it's a big book, so it's easily overlooked. But
Mm-hmm.
the author says that pendulums are the gods of dreams. And this is where it takes on a whole other dimension that is advanced, but really when it comes down to it, it's like, what are you benefiting by doing business with what, right? For
Mm-hmm.
me, I was always anti-social media because I didn't want to be a part of that pendulum, even before I found reality transurfing. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that it was just captivating me and sort of sucking me into some, something that wasn't real, and I wasn't really benefiting much from it. Now I use the pendulum of social media to help with my intention, right? With what it is that I want to do with my life. I
Mm-hmm.
understand the swing of social media, right? Like a pendulum swinging back and forth, captivating people and gaining attention. I use that the natural physics of what is going on there to help with mine. So it's more about tuning in to the pendulums that are going to help you and being honest about what it is they're giving you, what it is you're giving it, and is that a fair shake? And what I tell people in the community is make certain that you are getting at least an equal deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yes.
when you get home from work and you turn on the news, and within in an hour you don't feel well anymore, you turn the news off, and then you go and you cook dinner, and your mindset is in the dumps, and you're whatever, thinking whatever sort of negative thoughts. The
Mm-hmm.
pendulum just got an hour of your energy, right? That it
Mm-hmm.
used. But what did you get, right?
Right.
What did you walk away from the deal with? And as soon as you can start moving through your reality, thinking like this, seeing
Mhm.
things like this, you will feel an absolute increase in your energy levels because you're acknowledging when something is not a fair shake, right? And like I can be a bit of a weirdo in my in my personal life. Like I'll be out in public and somebody will come up to me, maybe, you know, somebody I knew in high school or something, and kind of a person that I don't really feel, you know, I have any benefit of knowing right now. I know that sounds a little
Mhm.
bit, you know, off, but like this happens to me quite frequently now where people approach me and like I'll just be like, "Hey, how's it going? Yeah, nice to see you. See you later." And I just immediately exit because I know that I'm most likely not going to have an exchange that I'm going to benefit from, and I don't
Mhm.
have the time to entertain whatever it is they're looking for, right? So
Yeah.
when you get to a place where you can just kind of like drop that axe and move on with your day, move on with your hour, move on with your time, move on with your the direction of your thinking, right? I mean, I'm a highly functioning person at this point that has a lot of different things, you know, waiting in the wings and for me to feed my energy to throughout my day. And if I come in front of a person that wants to have a conversation about something, then, and it's not of any interest to me, then it takes me away from thoughts that I need to continue the momentum with what it is that I'm doing. So it becomes like almost like a checks and balances sort of equation where you see with clarity, is this helping me? Is this taking away from me? And how can I actively reconcile these different situations I encountered to make sure that I am the one that is mostly benefiting most of the time? And again, this is kind of like this is a little bit of you know, there's a little bit of a vibe of like heresy here, right? Because we're convinced that we've got to give to others and we've got to care and we've got to listen, and oh, somebody wants you to sign a petition, stop in front of the grocery store and listen to 15 minutes about what it is they need you to sign the thing for, or you know, all these different scenarios we encounter. If you're just assume the, you know, the position that I don't care, I'm moving on with my day and what I need to do, then it's kind of like, wow, God, are you really a you're not a very good person then, right? And this is part of the manipulative tactics that pendulums use to keep people in, to keep people
Mhm.
quote unquote caring, right?
Yeah. Yep. But if there's an energetic this is how I explain it to myself in these situations, because I'm right with you on looking and seeing where, you know, where's the energy flowing in this situation. And if it's not at least a mutual flow, it's not helpful. Is that when there's an energy mismatch, that neither person benefits ultimately, because if they're like in your example, if there's a petition and I'm listening to this petition thing and I know I'm not going to sign the petition, it's a waste of their time, it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of time, generally speaking. And so really, you know, tapping into that deeper sense of reciprocity, I guess, that when, you know, when two people or a person and something else is spending time doing something that's not going to help either one, or that only helps like the pendulum, it's really it's unhelpful to participate in that, especially if you're doing it from this place of like, you know, this learned sense of kindness. And one of the
Yes.
things that I really have come to with both thought processes or thought loops, thought forms, whatever you want to call them, and pendulums, and you spoke to this as well, but I wanted to really highlight it. The fact that they exist and they get strengthened really speak to the human desire of being connected with something larger than ourself and being fed by that and also feeding it. Now, pendulums that are unhelpful, you know, you end up feeding it, it ends up taking your energy. But it when you're involved in them and you don't realize how much energy it's taking from you, or you're generating a lot of emotional energy in connection with the pendulum, it really does have you feeling connected to something larger thing, a larger idea, a larger movement, a larger something else. But oftentimes those things don't serve you personally. They suck you in, you follow the script. That script doesn't really serve you. The script doesn't really help you in any meaningful way. But one of the ways that it really can help you and helps us to feel like we're connected with something larger than ourselves is when we're connected with the pendulum in a way that supports and helps us. So oftentimes that's like reaching for the higher pendulum, the higher idea, the higher community that really supports your values and that you really want to be connected with, and that helps to move you forward and elevate you and expand you in some way. And then I always warn people that, every time you move into that, there's always a danger. I mean, it's wonderful in the beginning, it helps to move you forward. But if you begin to identify with that thought form or that pendulum as something that you identify with as you, that helps to define you, then you begin to lose your energy and your power and your autonomy and authority. And so there's a real kind of dance there in allowing yourself to expand into a pendulum or a thought form that serves you in the way that it serves you, and elevate yourself and whatever thought form it is in the process, and then letting that become the next box you get trapped in.
Yes. So, this is really a big part of why I feel I'm finding personal success at this point in my life is
Hmm.
understanding exactly what it is that you just touched on. First of all, the nature of how pendulums work, especially things like movements or social causes, or
Hmm.
is that you buy into it, and like I said, it gives you something initially.
Hmm.
Otherwise you wouldn't buy into it, right? It's got
Right.
to give you something initially, but then as time goes on, it asks you for more and it gives you less.
Hmm.
So it exponentially asks you for more and it gives you less and less and less as it's asking you for more. It's kind of like a lullaby or something. It's putting you to sleep
Hmm.
so you can give more without really questioning why,
Yeah.
and accept less without really noticing.
The deeper you get into it, like the harder it is to extricate yourself. And
Yes.
so if you've trotted around, like if you join a group or a cult, like do a cult, because it's so well documented how that works, that there's something about it that really serves you. And I actually, when I lived in Santa Fe for a while, I met that Heaven's Gate guy, Applegate,
Hmm. Oh,
Applewhite,
wow. Interesting. Yeah, I remember
and
when that
some,
happened.
yeah, and some of their people. And the people in that cult, it wasn't like they were, you wouldn't have thought it was a cult. It was seemed like, to hear them talk about it, they were quiet, they were introverts, they were people who kind of felt they were sort of the precursor to the geeks, that they were that kind of a thinker where they were a little bit introverted. They thought in kind of the engineering systems sort of way. There wasn't really a place for them quite yet in society. And they found a home. They found other people like them. And so when I met them, which was a couple of years before they had that mass suicide, it was really interesting. And I was so taken aback by the soft spokenness, by yeah, we just found a community of people that we really love and feel connected to. And so if you feel like a misfit like I did, this might be something that is a home for you. I mean, it was very
Oh,
compelling. So we actually went to their second thing, and then it got a little weird. Then we're like, okay, there's something a little more going on here. But they
yeah,
were
yeah,
just
yeah.
such nice people, and it was, we were kind of part of this crazy woo-woo community in Santa Fe where people were way out there, and yet the Heaven's Gate people were not. They were like, we're finding our home here, and within this community, and it was nice. It was quiet. It was really toned down. It was energetically quiet, which was nice for me. And you could see how people really like they found themselves in this place with other people that they really enjoyed, where they felt understood. And then, and a few years later, when they had that mass suicide, and they were talking about the beliefs, and they did talk a little bit about their beliefs, but they were like, yeah, you don't have to believe any of this stuff. It's just kind of like, kind of what we talk about. And I thought, it is sort of this slow dance that you get hooked by it because you just feel like you belong. There's something that strikes you as like, this feels inviting to me. This feels affirming of me. And then by the
Yes.
end, where these people had basically drunk poison to go on the Hale-Bopp comet, I think it was, that somehow between that point where they found that simpatico with other people and where they had given themselves over to the point of dying for
Yeah.
these beliefs, like that was was a slow dance to get there.
Oh,
And I'm all,
totally.
yeah, but that's kind of how pendulums work. And the deeper you are into a thought form or a pendulum, the harder it is to pull out because you've organized your life around certain aspects of that pendulum. You kind of, when you pull out, it's almost like you have to reorganize your whole life.
Yes. Yes. And the other adherents to the
Mm-hmm.
pendulum are given tactics by the pendulum to make sure, to make
Yeah.
certain that no one breaks free, right?
Yes.
That's
Mm-hmm.
why if you follow a political party,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you're, a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, you've got to fall in line with all the different points,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like let's say you're a liberal and you agree with all the different liberal ideas except one, right? Let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're anti-abortion or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
That pendulum that's created is going to call you out. It's not going to allow you
Mm-hmm.
to have a different thought. You will, that's why typically whatever political party is selling whatever, you have to buy all of it or
Mm-hmm.
you don't belong, right? Like you would
Yes.
be in social media, let's say on Facebook or whatever, and you could not express an opinion against one of the beliefs without
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of people jumping on you and like ripping you apart about it, right?
Yeah.
Same for the other side, right? You couldn't be a
Yes.
conservative person and say, okay, well, I believe in abortion,
Mm-hmm.
then you'd have that side rip you apart, right? Because that's
Right.
just not acceptable. So, it's a situation where, again, you just keep getting asked for more. The buy-in becomes more and more and more and more. And I've experienced this in my life personally, in ways that, and this is where reality transurfing gets kind of hardcore, is
Mm-hmm.
when you realize that pendulums maybe are gripping people in your life, family, friends, a
Mm-hmm.
spouse, in a way that is no longer tolerable for you as the individual, right? There's one thing about managing your own pendulums and making sure that you're doing good deals for you and no pendulum is getting the upper hand with you. There's
Mm-hmm.
another thing of being called out by the people in your life for separating, right? I mean, I have a number of family members that are convinced that I'm not a very good person
Mm-hmm.
because I don't care about what's on the news. I don't care about all the social things going on right now. And I have my own ideas about all of this, such as, if the pendulum of mass media and the pendulum of politics, the pendulum of social media is
Mm-hmm.
broadcasting this stuff to us at the level that it is, and
Mm-hmm.
really putting it out there on blast that these are the issues and you must tune in and you must take a stance and you
Uh-huh.
must follow the whatever the thing is, right? And if it is at such a volume, because let's all face it, the volume is higher than it's ever been,
Mm-hmm.
then why do the situations actually continue to devolve and get worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't they fixed then? If the human energy is what's needed, if you tuning in is what is needed to help eradicate the thing, then why are the situations and the all the quote unquote problems, why are they getting worse? And the bottom line of it is, from my perspective, is the pendulum does not want it to get better, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pendulum does not want it to get better because it wants you to continue to tune in with your quote unquote care, right? So it can
Mm-hmm.
sell you things and get more of that attention to make the
Right.
pendulum swing more wildly. So when you start really dissecting, and I've asked this question a number of times in my community, what's the number one reality transurfing concept that sort of blew it all wide open for you? And people say pendulums really is where it's at, because once you can sort of see what exactly is going on kind of behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
I like to say it's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz finally getting to Oz and peering behind the curtain and seeing that there's just a guy back there working a machine,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like that. Once you see it from an energetic standpoint, especially if you do not have what it is that you want right now in your life, right? If you're waking up
Mm-hmm.
in the morning and you're feeling like, God, I thought there would be more to life, or I want to feel like I have more purpose, or my life has more meaning, or I want higher energy levels, or God, I just really want to get this 30 pounds off, why didn't I ever follow my, love of whittling wood or whatever it is that you wanted for yourself and you kind of gave
Right.
up on.
Mm-hmm.
This is all because of pendulums taking you away from your own energy that you could use to serve yourself. And energy and attention has become the ultimate commodity, you
Yes.
know, the ultimate commodity. And reality transurfing helps the individual. Now, reality transurfing, yes, it's a pendulum itself, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
people that have taken it too far.
Mm-hmm.
And transurfing, my joke is when people say to me, well, isn't reality transurfing just a pendulum itself? And I say, okay, well, yes, it is. And if that's the case, then I'm the one that's been the ultimate like pendulum adherent here, right? But it's serving my own purpose, right? It's serving
Right.
my own purpose, which is a very clear intention on my part. So that's the ringer here. Is anything done with lucidity and clarity and awareness, the best of your ability? You know what
Mm-hmm.
it is you're doing, you know why you are doing it, you know what you are giving, you know what you are getting, and you are okay with that deal, right? You're okay with it and you feel like it's a good it's a good fair deal. Now, some of the people listening might say, well, I do like watching the news because I do feel informed. And initially that pendulum, will kind of like speak through you because it wants to, keep you from separating. But
Mm-hmm.
once you start to then have some awareness around whatever that activity is. So initially, the person may say, well, I like watching the news and it makes me feel good because I'm an informed citizen and I don't want to, be disconnected from the world. So that'll be the initial reaction. And then after that, there will just be a little seed planted in the person's mind. And this is what happened for me. Then I would notice, I really don't feel good after every time I would look at CNN on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh wow, that really did take 30 minutes of my life that I could have been that I could have used to do this other thing that I want to do. And then it's like Pandora's box has been opened. And if you're awareness level is high enough, you will really start to acknowledge a very different, a very different scenario than the initial response, right?
Yeah, totally. And the one thing you said in there that I don't want to get lost in there is that when that pendulums serve the pendulum, it's like bureaucracies serve the bureaucracy, but pendulums serve the pendulum. It's collective energies that are sort of self-consuming. They require the energies of everybody that participates in the pendulum to keep that pendulum alive, because without them, it loses its life. But the reality transurfing is really geared toward the individual. And
Yeah.
it's the individual, when you realize how you're interacting with these pendulums or thought forms or however you think about them, that when you are individually being served by that, that is something that is beneficial for you. But when you, like your example with the news, when you realize or you think I'm being served by this because I'm being informed, but you realize, oh my gosh, like I get sucked into the stories, or then I'm find myself in the us versus them energy, and then I feel like I need to have a glass of scotch, or a cookie or something,
Yeah.
that when it stops serving you, like when your energy is getting pulled in, that becomes, that really shows how the pendulum's power. And the other thing that I wanted to note about pendulums too, because we think about them as terms of ideas, or we've been talking about them in terms of as ideas, but I have found for me that there are also very strong emotional pendulums. And they're often attached to thoughts, but they pull us in to the energies of right and wrong. They pull us into the us and them. They pull us into different kinds of energies that sometimes become their own kind of pendulum. And one of the big ones we have going on in our society now is kind of this energy of lack, or of not being enough, or of being insufficient in some way. And that when you operate from that emotional pendulum, let's just say, of lack, that that has its own inherent structure as well. And that no matter what you do, because you make lack real, that as you're interacting with lack as a reality, and everything you do to try to get out of lack, or to change lack, or to make lack bad, or to enter into it, it's all a validation of that energy of lack. That's however you choose to interact with it. And it's the same thing with the us and the them, and the right and the wrong, that no matter what you're doing, if you're fighting against something or you're fighting for it, you're giving it your energy. And it doesn't matter which part of that pendulum that you're operating in, it's taking your energy. So even if you think you're coming at it from like that place of, well, I'm right, and so I want to like affirm my
Yes.
rightness by being part of this pendulum, ultimately, when you kind of sit back for a moment, all that feeling of being right has just sucked all of your energy and saps your adrenals. And it doesn't really serve you, it serves that emotional pendulum.
Totally, totally. And that's a great point. And this is what, once you can see exactly what it is that you're touching on here, that it's not only good energy that
Hmm.
um, pushes the pendulum, and it's actually more so even the bad energy. And one of the greatest examples of this, we've lived through this, is Trump becoming president. Trump, in my opinion, did not become president because of the people that loved him. He
Hmm.
became president because of the people that hated him. Any high emotional state
Hmm.
pushes the pendulum really, really hard. And this is exactly why the media and politics, it's why these entities are pitching to us these ideas that are extremely polarized in nature. It wants
Hmm.
to evoke something, either absolute love or absolute hate. It doesn't care. And that's why these big massive pendulums are thriving so much, because they've
Yeah.
sort of tapped in to, okay, this is how we make money now. It's
Hmm.
got to be polarized, it's got to be hard hitting, and it's got to be something where everyone will take a stance with either love or hate.
Yeah.
getting back to what I touched on, it doesn't want to actually resolve the issue. It wants to convince you to either love it or hate it. It doesn't care because it can use both. And that's exactly how this thing operates. Now, one really, really cool saying in reality transurfing that alone has the ability to completely change your life, and it is an absolute game changer, is the saying, there is evidence to support all theories.
Yes. Yes,
So
absolutely.
when you take this information that there is evidence to support all theories and you start to look at reality through this filter, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that are buying into conservative ideas, they're not wrong. They're just collecting the evidence that they need, which is abundant, to
Mm-hmm.
support the theories that they have chosen. Goes
Right.
the same for the other side. It
Mm-hmm.
goes the same for any religious conflict that's going on in the world. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong, or
Mm-hmm.
rather, nobody's wrong, everyone's right, right?
Right. Yeah, because
No
there's
one's wrong
evidence for everything.
because there's evidence for everything. So it's about choosing the theories that are good for you
Mm-hmm.
and looking at reality through that lens rather than, what is being handed to people at the moment, which is, hey, you got to choose a side now.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your polarized topics, which side are you on? And just even dealing with people in your life, family, friends, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Once you really adopted this idea that the pendulums are just kind of working through people and using people, and there is in fact evidence to support all theories, you can have compassion for anybody believing in a cause. First of all, you can say to yourself, well, the pendulums really got a hold of them. And then also, they've just collected the evidence that they need to support the theory that they've chosen to believe in. It
Mm-hmm.
neutralizes so much conflict. It's like unbelievable. And then you realize in your own choosing, right, of whatever theories you've decided to adopt, you now choose them with this new, lucid state.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a theory that I'm choosing for myself? Or is it a theory that a pendulum has pitched to me and then asked me to go about collecting evidence to reinforce that theory that it wants me to buy into for whatever reasons? Some of them are clear, some of them aren't. But it's really just like a massive, separation from the matrix. It's like Neo in the Matrix when he takes the pill, right? And he
Uh-huh.
wakes up and he's disconnecting from the thing that's got him in the goop, and he's
Mm-hmm.
unplugging all the cords and stuff like that. That's essentially what it is, And it's a
Yeah.
trip. It's a
Yeah.
trip.
And the one word you said in there that I just wanted to be sure that people didn't let it slide by was neutralize, because pendulums use both positive and negative and love based and hate based, or these different kinds of energies, and in the human energy system, fear and anger and rage and these carry a lot more amplitude at this point than feeling good and feeling loving and that kind of stuff. So even on the positive side of the issue, oftentimes people are positive from a place of outrage. So that those energies are very strong in the human energy system, and they really feed the pendulums. But even if you're on that side of being pro something, to think about it in terms of looking at the evidence to find that place of neutrality, because that's really where you are in your own energetic integrity, is when you're kind of, you're not leaned over to one side, you're not leaned over another side, nobody's pulling your arm here and there. You're able to be in that place of neutrality and make your own lucid choices, and then choose the evidence that you see to support your choices without investing yourself in the energy and the emotion and the rightness and wrongness that often come with the pendulums. So, but it was that place of neutrality that I really wanted to highlight, because everything wants us to take an emotional stand, an energetic stand, to fight from one side or another. But it's that neutrality that you're really in your own power.
And it's the neutrality. Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it. It's the neutrality that is going to help you in furthering yourself rather than you furthering something that doesn't serve you. Exactly, in your own
Yeah.
power. On a personal note,
Hmm.
I'll just tell you quickly one of the ways that I've experienced this. So it's, reality transurfing is extremely interesting worldview to live by because, I used to be very challenged. Why is this happening? And why does this happen? And why is this person like this? And, you know, not understanding things, not being okay with how systems were, just kind of getting, this visual that I have, just being like out at sea, the tide's gone out, and you're just kind of getting tossed around by the waves, and you
Hmm.
don't really know what's going on, right? And then when you really understand this stuff and you're able to stand back and say, God, I see exactly what's playing out here. And it's really up to me to decide if I'm okay with it or not, rather than just getting
Hmm.
tossed about in the waves. So my mother, when I was young, maybe early teens, she became born again Christian, but
Hmm.
one of the more extreme, like an evangelical sort of sect of Christianity, and everything became about that, right?
Hmm.
And we were all going to hell, and we needed to do this, and we couldn't do that, and there was no more TV, right? She was one of the adherents that had bought into it
Hmm.
100%, right? And it
Yeah.
and it became a massive, massive, massive issue that caused lots and lots and lots of problems within the family dynamic. And it
Hmm.
went on for a lot of years. About 5 years ago, she decided that Christianity was no longer for her, and she
Hmm.
went to the complete other side. She was an agnostic, and she changed her political views, and she became, a person that would fight for all these very popular social causes and be very loud about it and get
Hmm.
online and say things and do things and call people out. Well, when the whole thing happened with the recent issues with police, she decided to attack my brother on social media because he's a police officer in Bakersfield.
Uh-huh.
And I saw very clearly, that my mom is really just a person that's allowing pendulums to take her, and at a great cost.
Yeah.
Her whole life, she has lost because of her relationship. The hook, line, and sinker, just
Hmm.
buys into everything, doesn't ask any questions. She'll be in the front of the line, screaming the loudest, holding up the sign, and thinking she's doing right. The reason that this is a valuable point to remember is it's one thing if you're not getting a good deal. It's
Right.
another thing if you're losing
Hmm.
big time, just like your story with the Colt in
Yeah.
New Mexico, right? At a certain point, there's this crossover, and you can lose. And even if it is just time alone,
Hmm.
right? A lot of times, I believe that when people say, God, it's so crazy, I woke up and I'm 50, like, how did the last 30 years just fly by?
Hmm.
Right? You were under that, you were essentially euthanized for that
Hmm.
time, not really living in a state of lucidity and clarity and awareness. You were under that anesthesia that the pendulum, you know, gives you. And you can do some crazy stuff, and you can lose, things like
Yeah.
family members, or give up on your purpose, all kinds of big consequences. So, this is a huge topic in transurfing, massive. But the bottom line of it is, are you buying into something that is causing you to lose something? And I know a lot of people that have lost buying into the political and media thing, right?
Yeah.
Or some of these big social things. And it's not about not caring about that thing, but caring about yourself more and making certain, with these turbulent times and these pendulums getting more extreme and more, manipulative and all that stuff, that you as an individual stay intact, right?
Hmm.
You stay intact,
Yes.
and you stay intact with, you know, the things that are valuable. My mom did not have the children that she had just so 30 or 40 years later, her kids want to have nothing to do with her. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? Like, that goes against her intention as a parent. So it's really about asking yourself, like, what you want and what you're giving to your world. Is it helping you gain what you want? Really helping you gain what you want?
And
Or is
really
it
helping you gain what you really want, and
what
not
you really
necessarily what you
want?
want in the surface. Because, like the example that you just gave with your mom, in her perspective, she may not realize how much she's giving up. Because she's part of this larger movement. And so it feels oftentimes, when you're part of something that's larger than yourself, that that you're being fed somehow, that you are not giving up, you're not losing out on something, you're kind of giving yourself over to this large stream, and you're just
Yeah,
floating down this stream, but that stream's not really serving you. But it's hard to see. It's easy to see in somebody else, but it's really hard to see in yourself when you get caught up in those things, how much things are not serving you, because it feels like it's so important. So I
totally.
think, yeah, looking at some of the stories, like if you can identify this in other people, imagine looking at your life from other people's perspective, and what pendulums might they say you're caught in, and just really give those a good look. And like Renée was saying, see what you're getting out of the deal. And if you're not getting out of the deal, at least half the energy, yeah, move on.
Totally. And do the work to disconnect and
Hmm.
understand that disconnection might be a little bit messy. It might
Yeah.
anger some people. It might,
It's like a
um,
divorce.
it's like a divorce,
Yeah.
exactly. And pendulums have a lot of tricks to keep you back in, right? To
Hmm.
get you to get you back in. But for anyone that's listening to this that feels like, "God, this is crazy, but I'm curious," read Reality Transurfing steps 1 through 5. Even if it's just the Pendulums chapter, or we have the audiobook on Transurfing TV, and you
Hmm.
can just listen to the Pendulums chapter. But once you sort of are hip to the game, right? It Reality takes on a whole new dimension. I mean, it is a trip. And like I said, this can cause unbelievable upheaval in
Hmm.
your reality in some ways. Mine's been turned upside down, in the
Hmm.
last 6 years. But my God, I'm living the life that I want to live now. And I don't care if my family thinks I'm a bad person because I don't watch the news, or I don't care if people question me because I don't vote, or I
Hmm.
don't care, like, I don't care anymore. And there
Right.
is so much power to be had in stopping that level of caring that ultimately takes from you way more than it gives, and I think this is exactly why we have so many people that are not happy with their lives, period.
Absolutely.
This is exactly the reason, you know.
It totally is. And so if you're intrigued with this, I invite you and really encourage you, if you're on Facebook, to join the Reality Transurfing, Renee's Reality Transurfing Facebook group. And you can find that and all of her links on conversationsfromtheedge.net. So I encourage you to look further, check out Transurfing TV. The books are on there for free, the audiobooks. There's a ton of videos on there. You can really steep yourself in this. You can join the Facebook group and talk more and ask questions and find people who are starting to live on this different level of reality than what we've been taught we can have. So with that, Renee, I really want to thank you for this conversation. We've gone kind of like way over what we normally do, but it's a really important conversation to have. And so if you've been intrigued by this, continue to investigate this so you can uncover the pendulums that have control over you and set yourself free. So thank you for being here and sharing this with us. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to our next one.
Likewise, Christine. Thanks for having me.
This is your host, Christine Madera. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.